We have an attempted assassination on an ex-president.
I really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
The attempted assassin died at the scene, and luckily, assassination attempt was foiled.
They were intended to prevent his election in order to save our democracy in the eyes of the idiot who did that.
Man gets shot and survives, okay, you become pretty popular.
Of course, Donald Trump is a known quantity in terms of having a larger-than-life personal reputation. There are many, many people who fervently and enthusiastically embrace him and think he is the only one that can take the country in the right direction.
In some ways, I would say that he's an embarrassment to the United States. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I won't tell you. It could be a good thing for some people, because it undermines the United States policies, which those that are actually inimical to the world.
And there's perhaps an equal number who fervently believe he's the worst thing for the country.
Donald Trump has gotten to where he's gotten by being very divisive and appealing to identity politics of white resentment.
Christians, get out and vote just this time.
Christian concern about Christian fundamentalist biblical values and otherwise, and appealing to rural constituencies.
But you can hear apocalyptic language on both sides. You can hear Republicans who say if Kamala Harris is elected, that's it, we don't have a country anymore. You hear people say if Trump comes in, that's it, he's a fascist and we're going to be in effect.
And polarizing not just amongst people, but families. Like families have been ruined, families have been destroyed, and 13, 14, 15 years old and their parents kicked them out of the house because they're thinking differently than their parents.
It's not good for a country to be as divided as the United States currently is. Now, we know that Donald Trump is a divider.
So Trump's definitely a threat to democracy. He already tried to end it once, and that's not an exaggeration. He literally said we should terminate all the rules, regulations, and articles in the Constitution. So if you say we should terminate the Constitution, you're obviously a threat to democracy.
If Trump wins, we'll definitely be moving to Australia.
G'day Australia, coming home.
And another candidate, which is the current president, has been withdrawn from candidacy and being replaced by the Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Second gentleman with the First Lady.
Kamala Harris, when she became the nominee, highlighted how she got there from being the daughter of a Caribbean African father and a South Asian mother to try and represent as a prosecutor everybody. And that her whole pitch was that while I may be a woman, and I am a woman, and while I may be someone with brown skin, and I am a person with brown skin, my goal is to represent everybody.
She couldn't run a toilet. She couldn't run anything. She don't know what she's doing. She never did anything.
And my economic plan would strengthen America's economy. His would weaken it. I am also a capitalist. And I know the limitations of government.
She is, in fact, a Marxist/communist. Remember, I'd say all the time, our country will never be socialist, right? We will not have a socialist. Well, I was right.
There is enough, if you take away the partisan polemical aspect, enough to be concerned about the United States right now. Immigration is one thing. Inflation, the long-term soundness of the economy.
On top of that, people are struggling to pay their rent. People are struggling to actually live. And a lot of people don't know how they're going to pay rent this month, or if they're going to have to decide between electricity and rent. I'm a congressional candidate now, running in this district, in the poorest congressional district in the country. Some parts of the Bronx, you go to them and you see people, they're laying down, and you don't know if they're dead or if they're just really high, or you don't know what is the case with people here in the Bronx that are just nodding out like that in the streets. It's horrible.
Stop the drugs here. Stop the drugs, which is the main freaking problem. Yeah. Why doesn't anyone address that fucking issue? Stop the drug dealers on the corners that have been doing it for fucking decades since I've been here. Stop that, and then you say you've done something.
The democratic system in the United States is shambolic, it's embarrassing, and it's an affront to the basic principle of democratic responsiveness. You don't need to be trained as a political scientist to understand that this country's system of democracy is extremely unequal.
But then you also have some of the richest zip codes, like you go up to Riverdale. It's a very rich area in the Bronx. And it's also in the same borough. You know that you have the poorest congressional district in the country, and you also have a very rich town as well. And or you have Manhattan as well, where some of these some of these like condos, some of these rents are extremely expensive and have been made expensive for reasons to kick the poor people out, and kind of turn it into a banker's paradise. And New York has become this way because of the fact that we don't have a productive economy anymore.
You've got people who are really, really struggling. There is so much wealth in the world and so much wealth in the United States that if you could free it up to meet everybody's basic needs, you could produce societies that people were really happy about living in.
It's democracy for the very richest, and it's nothing for the poorest. Their preferences are systematically underrepresented in the policy choices of our representatives.
I mean, you look at this area, the Bronx has been run by Democrats pretty much for over 50 years. And are you going to say Republicans will be better? No, they'll be worse. My name is Vish Burra. I am the executive secretary of the New York Young Republican Club. This is the New York Young Republican Clubhouse that you're in right now. So the New York Young Republican Club is a meeting place, a hub.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax.
On top of that, we have millions of people.
The endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sharon Fain, who also...
Woke culture is a virus.
October 5th, if you want to join the Trump phone banking team,
Young conservatives and Republicans locally, but also a citadel and beacon for Republicans and conservatives and people who sympathize with our views and values globally. Richard Nixon, former president of the United States, was a member of this club, New York Young Republican Club, big supporter of the club. Up there, Allen Dulles. He's the guy that essentially created the CIA. So the founder of the CIA was a member of this club.
We will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
MAGA means we're great. We are the best country in the world. You know, having that pride in your country, I think is very important.
So there's three pillars that the MAGA value set, or the MAGA priorities stand on. The first and foremost priority is controlling, limiting immigration, mass immigration, and illegal immigration. So that is the very, very first step. This is the priority. This has always been the priority.
MAGA means restoring the American dream, because the American dream is dead in this country. The biggest challenge for this country is the weaponized system of justice, as well as the open border, those two things, and they go hand in hand, because an open border aids and abets our administrative state, the Democratic Party.
That's not a system that's sustainable.
We've always had some illegal immigration, but the numbers that we've seen the last 4 years are on a level that most Americans cannot comprehend. You have a town in Ohio, 40,000, and you have 20,000 people who are not Americans. You can call them Americans or newcomers, or call them whatever you want. At the end of the day, they were not brought up here.
What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country.
Have you been to our southern border?
No.
It's open. It's open. I've been there, and there was some attempt to build a barrier, a physical barrier. We have had, at a minimum, between 10 and 12 million people cross the border illegally during the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration.
The United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported.
We know that there are people on terror watch lists, hundreds or thousands of them that get across. Of course, it's a security risk.
I think the only thing that people in the United States and politicians can agree upon.
Well, on a global level, capital wants people to move from the poor countries of the world in the third world, global south, to rich countries like the United States and Western Europe. And this is something that has always been the case. From the multinational corporation perspective, that they want more workers, they want cheap laborers.
J.D. Vance even said the housing prices in America are going up because of the immigrants. But the immigrants are coming here without any money. The guys crossing the border, they're not even taking a plane. Sometimes people take planes, overstay their visas, that's different. But the ones crossing the border from Mexico have $0. What, they went and bought $1 million house and drove up your housing prices? How could they? They don't have any money.
Migration is the bogeyman that will be used by politicians, whether they are liberals or conservatives.
We are going to start the largest mass deportation in the history of our country.
What we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half. We have cut the flow of fentanyl by half, but we need Congress to be able to act to actually fix the problem.
Migration is the cause of everyone's problems. That the reason why the cost of food has increased is because of migration somehow. The reason why inflation takes place in housing and other categories is because migrants are here. They have these false ideas that migrants are somehow taking away services or are living off the system, when in fact the data shows that migrants actually contribute to the economy.
Racist. I have no problem with people coming here. Do it the right way like everybody. My grandparents had to do it that way.
So Donald Trump is using this lie to perpetuate a belief that migrants are the source of people's problems, because rather than saying the source of people's problems are Americans' foreign policy and wars abroad and so forth, they would prefer to blame it on migrants. So it even helps the governing classes in that sense.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
This is a disaster. And both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are using identity politics to divert attention. They both are using identity politics to divert attention from that fundamental class divide. So the Republican Party says the problem is immigrants. So the Republican Party is using white identity politics to try to divert attention from this huge class divide in our country.
That's why we defend free speech and advocate for political prisoners and condemn the persecution of women or religious minorities or people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender.
And the Democratic Party is saying the whole problem is stupid white men. That's the problem. The problem is these stupid white losers who have congregated around Donald Trump.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
It's all being grouped under the heading of woke. That's a term dating back to the 1940s, when black Americans referred to being woken up to injustice. But that history has largely been lost on current day leaders, such as, for example, our former president.
And I don't like the term woke because I hear woke. You know, it's like just a term that half the people can't even define it. They don't know what it is.
First of all, wokeness, like political correctness, was supposed to show a special sensitivity to the oppression of various identity groups, racial, ethnic, and sexual. The wokeness movement started to throw doubt, or pretended to throw doubt, on basic biological facts. What we understand from biology, for example, there are males and females.
So I know a gay dad in Florida, and he had to take out pictures, or they took out the pictures for him from the yearbook, where he was posing with his children, and there was a pride flag in the background. Now that's their home. He adopted those kids and he's raised them. He's now a single dad and he's an incredible dad. But the state of Florida says, you're not equal. I don't want to see your rainbow flag. I don't want to know that you're gay.
I don't care what Hollywood says. I don't care what big corporations say. Here I stand. I'm not backing down.
And if I find out that you're gay, I might punish the teacher for allowing it. And they could fine teachers up to $10,000 for treating gay people as equals to straight people.
LGBTQI+ kids are resilient. They are fierce, they fight back, they're not going anywhere, and we have their back. This administration has their back.
In my opinion, parts of it have become totally sick. The whole thing with the puberty blockers, you look at what the science says. Or there's been so many studies done of it, and then you have to look at what the science says. But it's become what we call in English, a litmus test. If you don't support them, then you are reactionary.
I want to send a message to the entire community, especially to transgender children. You are loved. You are heard. You are understood. And you belong.
I am myself gay, but I am also a little concerned about the way transgender-related issues are playing out in grammar schools and junior high schools.
Have a black person in the ruling elite, that's not enough. You have to have a black woman in the ruling elite, and that's not enough. You have to have a black woman lesbian in the ruling elite, and that's not enough. You have to have a black woman lesbian cripple among the ruling elite. So everybody started to multiply their oppressions and then demand a seat among the ruling elite because of their multiple oppressions.
What people are really suffering from is class oppression, shall we say. I don't want to talk like a Marxist, but there are some principles there where the gulf in income inequality is growing. Well, if you're obsessed on identity, you're not going to see the commonality you have if you're Black or Latin with a poor white man.
In fact, in the moment of truth, when we had the biggest challenge to corporate capitalism in modern American history, the entire woke movement collaborated with the ruling class. Kamala Harris, she's obviously the woke candidate.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
Kamala Harris making history as the first Black woman and Asian American candidate to lead a major party ticket during a virtual DNC vote.
Kamala Harris didn't win anything. She was just selected behind closed doors. Nobody had any say whatsoever. And she was just, and then once she was selected by the inner circle of the ruling elite, starting with Biden, then Pelosi and Schumer, and Obama.
Democracy works, America.
They keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy?
So we don't really live in a democracy here. It's a very common refrain, but I think it's worth repeating. We live in a plutocratic system where you can look at the data, our policy choices correspond to the interests of a very specific sector and not to the vast majority of people in this country.
Three people in the United States, like you and you, control more wealth than 50% of our country.
Take anyone that you like, it doesn't matter.
That's just a staggering figure. 3 people who are standing in front of me control more wealth than half our country. That's the main source of the polarization.
I think the United States in many ways is undemocratic. Just because you vote once every 4 years for a president or once every 2 years, etc., for a local leader, doesn't, in my mind, constitute democracy necessarily.
I'm Chaz Freeman. I was a career diplomat for 30 years. I had a very exciting career. I was the interpreter for Richard Nixon during his visit to Beijing. If I were a diplomat in Washington reporting on American politics, as you are doing, I would say that we are entering a pre-revolutionary period.
Almighty God, amen and amen.
Nothing really works here anymore. It doesn't. It's a combination of dysfunctional, nothing gets done, and so corrupt.
In this country, we legalized corruption. We made it legal. We said money is speech, and any politician should be able to receive any amount of money from any actor they want. Okay, so it's no longer corruption. They're campaign contributions. But what do you call this? What do you call it when a corporation makes you a deal as a candidate and you get to office and you serve their interests?
If you're elected to office to the House of Representatives in the United States, you have your hand out for contributions. $30,000 a week in order to be able to run for office again. And this means that anyone with money can buy your loyalty.
The price is not all that high. Most people can be bought off for a relatively small sum. And even if it's a large sum they want, the ruling elites are so rich now, $50 million here, $100 million there, they could buy off anyone.
And so corruption is endemic. And the public understands that, which is why they hold the Congress in such very low esteem.
The politicians in Washington love corruption. So I dislike them way more than I dislike the Republican voters. So those guys say, both Republican and Democratic politicians go, give me the donor money. Give it to me in billions of dollars. I'll do whatever the donors say.
On many issues, they are exactly the same. So there is not the choice that there should be. So in effect, we have a duopoly, a two-party autocratic system, if you will, in which the choices are very limited, and the voters are not happy about this.
As part of our additional tax cuts, we will end all taxes on overtime. You know what that means?
So all of American media is a lie. They pretend that these guys are having debates and they're having discussions. Oh, what do you think about taxes? Oh, you think they should be lower for rich people too? Oh my God, me too. And then someone will pretend, oh no, don't do it, guys. Oh golly gee, they did it. It's all a theater. It's very, very poor theater, right? So it's a bunch of loser actors who are basically waiters and waitresses for the rich, and they serve them. So I have no respect for them.
You see, in a sense, the corruption of both parties. I mean, these people, in my opinion, are traitors to the nation, not to the party, because the founding of the United States was against colonialism. And therefore, our purpose was to demonstrate that the people can be trusted to govern themselves. And what you see every step of the way is that they are saying, no, you cannot trust the people to govern themselves.
Well, you know, a lot of people like to refer to the deep state in a way that is conspiratorial, and I would say that is not true, that there is a deep state that operates.
We have to control the media, we have to control the debate, and we have to make sure that people are kept stupid so they don't know what's going on. And I think, so you have this kind of alliance of the people who really would rather have a dictatorship or some kind of, I don't know, non-election, who are coming together.
I would say that the deep state embodies the establishment of the United States. When you mention the people who were neocons, they are the deep state. Deep state are actual people and organizations and institutions of the U.S. government that operate on different levels to ensure that disinformation is provided and advanced where people do not have an idea of what is actually going on.
Well, it's very influential, and I would remind you that when President Eisenhower coined that phrase, he said the military-industrial congressional complex.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Because the military-industrial complex is basically nominally private enterprise. Actually, it's state enterprise because it's all paid for by the state. It might as well be state-owned enterprise.
The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government.
And it takes the money that it gets from taxpayers and it bribes Congress for more money. So now we have, in addition to that, the intelligence complex. 17 intelligence agencies who also have big budgets and who are not accountable to the public because by definition.
Well, let me be first very, very clear.
the 2020 election was stolen from President Donald J. Trump.
We're going to see more of what we saw in 2020.
To the extent that we have a similar, like the January 6th activity, I don't know. Obviously, they set up some higher walls this time.
Depends on how he loses.
Most elections going forward are going to be 50-50, 51-49, 53-47, right? This is what it's going to go mostly. Unless it's some kind of big 56-57 win on either side, nobody's going to believe the election. So that is a very, very deep, difficult problem that we have to solve. So that's, we need a decisive victory. That's the only way we can begin to restore faith in the electoral system.
Whether it manifests into something, more violent or long-term, I don't really know. So, but I'm sure we'll have a very similar reaction to last time.
Fuck these Democrats! So, we need the Democrats to first lose twice possibly, break it up, where they go back to being a regional party.
Remember, we had a civil war in the 1860s. The United States system of government and our polity writ large has been described as an invitation to struggle. Struggle is what we do.
And in those situations, and when nobody starts trusting the results either way, civil war.
The U.S. is clearly in decline. About that, I don't think there can be any doubt. Exactly where along the decline it is, I can't say. Here is the peak, let's say the 1960s, up until roughly 1976, up until the Carter years. So this is the peak. It's a parabola.
But we're watching the collapse of the Republic, the constitutional order that has made us what we are over the last 240 years.
Is it here on decline? Is it here on decline? I can't say, but the fact that the U.S. is on decline or in decline, I don't think is open to serious question. You could see it.
I remember, I was not there, but I remember after our Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, 2.5 centuries ago, when Benjamin Franklin came out, he was asked, "What have you given us?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." I think we are losing it.
Yeah, you've been dancing with the devil. Be careful who you gunning for, cause when it settles, it's only pain and grief when you living lawless. We only chase it if the chance of profit's flawless. We keep our eyes on the weak, they know that they targets. Hunting for goodwill, we ain't looking for bargains. And you should say a prayer, ain't nobody praying for you. Cause if I want it, then it's mine, that's what I'm saying to you. If you faint hearted, you better leave. You try and cross me, then you dead to me.